And I'd like to now move to the regular Board of Directors meeting of the IDA. Jasmine, would you please take a roll call vote for attendance?
Indeed.
Here.
Mark Doyle.
Yeah.
Kathy Bauer.
Here.
Amy Bonadiri.
Here.
James Cohen.
Here.
Deidre Houston.
I'm here.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody of our conflict of interest disclosures. If anybody is aware of anything that we're going to be discussing during the meeting where they may have a conflict, we always ask you to disclose that at the beginning of the meeting. Is there any conflict with any of the items on the agenda that anybody has? No? Okay, if anything arises during the meeting, please let us know and state the conflict, and we'll recuse you from that part of the meeting. Sarah, proof of meeting notice is posted?
Yes.
Any bills and communications?
No.
Okay, we do have minutes from the December 11th meeting. If anybody has any corrections or modifications to changes? If not, would someone be willing to make a motion to approve these minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Amy. Could I get a second?
Second.
Mark, thank you. Okay, Jasmine, will you please take a vote?
Mark Doyle.
Approved.
Kathy Bauer.
Approved.
Amy Bonadiri.
Approved.
Jen Cohen.
Approved.
Deidre Houston.
Approved.
Indeed.
Approved. Okay, report of the treasurer. Oh, you know what? I would like to, before we start, I'd like to welcome Ron Hicks to our meeting. Ron and I had a discussion. Ron had been attending our meetings, and at one point, he sort of decided not to because he felt that he wanted to give us space, and he was concerned that perhaps, attending every meeting may make us feel uncomfortable with having a representative from the county executive's office here. And actually, I suggested to him that I thought we really would welcome having that type of, a closer partnership with Ron being at the meeting so that we could communicate instantaneously, really in some manners. And so I did encourage him if he would be willing to come to our meetings again. And I'm glad to see that you're here, Ron. And we do welcome and look forward to working with you, as we have in the past, very closely. So thanks for coming.
And just to further that, I did want to create some independence for this independent public authority, number one, but also two, going back about 8 years ago, creating a firewall between the executive branch and the public authority, primarily due to some projects that have come up in the past. And
Yeah.
so.
Yes, and we will do everything from our standpoint to make sure that exists, and I know that you're very sensitive about it. So again, welcome to the meeting, and we look forward to having you here. Okay, report of the treasurer, Jane.
At this time, there's no report. We have in-house audit at the end of the month, and then financials will be the finalized financials, or draft rather, by the end of February.
Great.
So
Okay, is there any committee reports, Sarah, that we need to,
No reports of the committee.
unfinished business?
No unfinished business.
All right. New business, 2024 review of activities by the Hudson Valley Agribusiness Development Corporation.
Yep, so we have Todd Erling here, and he had a big tree fall on his property and he lost internet access, so I can see he's in his car.
Hopefully not driving.
No, I'm pulled over in a neighbor's orchard where I get great cell phone reception.
Okay.
Good to see you all. Everyone is safe and sound, but it did require some late night chainsaw work with headlamps, and luckily my neighbor and I have a chainsaw each and a couple tractors, and we could get Niagara Mohawk in, but it takes a little longer to get the fiber optic crew in. So we did have power, and the generator ran all night. So that's
So as a wood turner, you got to tell me what kind of tree is this? I might want a piece of it.
Oh, well, listen, Chairman, we had a red oak and a white oak both come down. The one tree took the other one out, but it's going to take a little while till they get seasoned.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all again for another year of support. I know we made sure you guys have the one-page infographic with our annual report. In that, I just wanted to highlight, working top to bottom, what we try to do throughout the year is newsletter articles. We have a newsletter called The Cultivator. Please check it out. It's on our website. You can also sign up for it for monthly e-blast into your inbox. And we always try to run a story about an agribusiness, a farm, one of the entrepreneurs or the businesses that we're working with. And then we also try to highlight some of our service providers. You know, HVADC works similar to a construction management firm or a general contractor, where when we need a specialist, whether it's an accountant, whether it's an attorney or PR marketing specialist or food safety or food audit specialist, you know, we engage them contractually, much like you do when you're working on a brick and mortar project, whether you need an electrician or whether you need a excavator. And we always try to highlight some of those rock stars because, you know, we can't have an entire bench internally on our payroll, but we can have a very effective outlook and you know, virtual Rolodex to call upon some of those experts. So I just want to highlight two businesses in general where we had some nice feedback from some of those cultivator articles. Monty Lawson, the Catalyst Collaborative Farm in Millerton. We've really worked hard this year to launch a BIPOC accelerator. And that's to focus on BIPOC entrepreneurs, but also BIPOC service providers and the BIPOC business community in general. So not just farm and food, but then also those technical assistance experts that can work one-on-one with individuals. And then the other farm that we focused on just collaboratively with that cultivator article is Ronnie Brook and Rick Sosofsky. You know, we've worked with Ronnie Brook from the start of HVADC, and with the support of Dutchess County IDA, you know, they've been able to access different federal programs to upgrade for energy efficiency. We've helped them access some regional programs over the years for marketing. And most recently, they were able to access a Dairy Business Innovation Center grant out of UVM, the University of Vermont. That's our regional business excellence center. But not only did we help them with the grant, we then also were able to help them with a loan so that they could have the capital to enact the grant and also some of the matching funds that were necessary to access the grant. And we really look forward. They have some other interesting and exciting projects on the horizon coming up. So I'm sure you'll see them in some future articles and also annual reports. But with that, the Incubator Without Walls over its life has assisted over 50 businesses, actually 54. Last year, we assisted 5. And regionally, in our 6-county footprint, we've assisted over 315 businesses in the lifetime of that program. Our loan fund, since we started it in 2020, we've closed on 13 loans in the region. We're now up to a portfolio of over $1 million. 2 of those are in Dutchess, and I mentioned to you, Ronnie Brook. The other side of that is just keep that in mind because we have additional capital in our portfolio that originated out of ARPA funds. And so we're always looking for some other applicants to fill out that portfolio. And it's a revolving loan fund. So as loans get paid back, we have new capital to lend out. So just keep that in mind throughout the year. Our Hudson Valley Value Program continues to be a business to business as well as business to consumer database and searchable information provider. And then our Feed HV program, which, you know, takes advantage of not only the Good Samaritans and the volunteers around the region, but the farmers and the food businesses that have surplus food that's not sellable but is still consumable, and matching that up almost like an Uber for food with pantries on the ground. So not necessarily the regional food bank, but the individual pantry locations in all of our counties and towns. And you can see there we've had pretty significant impact this year. And then just some special initiatives that we've been working on that are both in the region, but reach beyond the region because we partner with New York State Department of Agriculture. The Meat Processing Expansion Grant. I mentioned the BIPOC Funding Accelerator. That was actually funded through Empire State Development, and it's because we are a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. And we also were able to access a Dairy Processing Funding Accelerator through the Dairy Business Innovation Center in Vermont. So with that, I'm going to take a quick breath, but just mention two things. One, that our affiliate corporation, the Farm and Food Growth Fund, is managing a statewide dairy farmer modernization improvement grant that will allow for dairy farmers to improve their bulk milk storage capacity on farm, or expand it. So upgrade it for energy efficiencies, upgrade it for food safety matters, or expand it so that they can have more time between tanker pickups. And that is a maximum grant of $250,000 per farm. And the Farm and Food Growth Fund is also awaiting for approval from USDA for about $14 million in projects statewide that will go to middle chain food entrepreneurs. That is through the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Program. Each state receives some of those funds from USDA. Farm and Food Growth Fund and HVADC are partnering with the Department of Agriculture to oversee that statewide as well.
So one question I have, or maybe just ask you to elaborate a little bit. Obviously, your organization serves the entire Hudson Valley, which we totally appreciate and respect. But in some ways, selfishly, we are the Dutchess County IDA. So I wanted to ask you a couple things. One of them is if you could talk about the support that you received from other counties within your footprint in comparison to ours. And then also just talk about how you assure that the funds that we contribute for the majority of the time are used to support Dutchess County farms and agriculture.
May
Yeah.
I just jump in and just quickly say that I'm on the board of Hudson Valley Agribusiness Development Corporation, and I understand we're not discussing business.
No.
We're just taking a report, so I'm sitting in and not recusing myself.
Okay, thank you.
If there is a decision to be made on it.
Okay. Okay, so
Good point, Mark and Chairman. Two great questions. So the first question, we do receive annual funding similar to what we do with Dutchess County from multiple other counties in the region: Sullivan, Columbia, Rensselaer, Albany, Washington counties. Historically, we had received funds from Orange County, but that has kind of passed by the wayside with changes with their IDA. Your contribution and your contract amount and terms are similar to Sullivan County and Rensselaer County. The other counties are close to what you guys have in an amount. It's slightly less, but similar multi-year terms. And I do want to thank you all. Over the time that we've had a relationship, you did increase that contract amount to reflect a little, inflationary / competitive environment that we're in over those 14, 15 years. We had been static for literally 12 years, and we appreciate you guys initiating the increase because that did allow us to go to some other county IDAs and economic development corporations and planning departments and illustrate that you had done so in reflection of the increase of operating expenses and the business climate, and several did match both in amount and in extending some terms of years. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second part of the question is, how do we assure that we're spending or focusing or you're getting the bang for your buck for that contractual amount? And what we do is we really try to make sure that when businesses approach us, we know where they're located, we know where their markets are, we know where they're sourcing from, so we can start to trace back the community that is affected, impacted, or benefiting. And that would be from a geopolitical viewpoint, right? From a county viewpoint. And so that's not always just where the business is located. That can also be where the business has markets or where the business is actually drawing supply from. Because remember, our core demographic and is not only farms, but businesses that benefit from farms or businesses that farms benefit from. So we make sure that we're really operating in an ecosystem in that way. And then lastly, again, appreciate Mark stating his position, but also just want to recognize his leadership, and also advocate that we appreciate the Dutchess County IDA and the long-term relationship that we've had, and want to continue to address and illustrate the impact that we have for you guys.
Any other questions anybody has? Ron?
Am I able to offer anything? Outside of this board and what Todd has already expressed, we have, I think we're the only ones that have an ag navigator in our region. And we established that quite a while ago in partnership with Hudson Valley Agricultural Development Corporation. Todd and his group served as more of a regional perspective for our ag navigator and a collaborator. We do a lot of things with Columbia County because of our proximity. And also Todd is involved with our county planning and development as it relates to ag zoning, land preservation, and also granting. So when we have a business, and we have an active one right now who's finally, I think, moving towards a food processing facility, which is something we desperately need. We, of course, use our local ag navigator like we would use Sarah, but we don't have the Empire State Development that Sarah would use at the state level or any regional effort. So we use Todd and Hudson Valley Agricultural Development Corporation. So just wanted to give you a little bit about what they do outside of what you may be familiar with directly.
And I do think it's important that and as Todd mentioned, it's not just the farms, but it's that there's businesses that need the product from the farms. So a farm may be in Columbia County, but a business that utilizes product is in Dutchess County. So we don't want to just focus on the farm itself and where it's located.
Yeah, and I'll just reinforce what Ron said there, sorry, but the processing side, it's also businesses that farms need in order to access different markets, and they might direct market and get the product back, or the product might go into a wholesale situation. So the processor we've been working with has been a long time approval process, which would be expected. But then we were also able to introduce them to some regional funding sources that came out of federal USDA programs that HVADC and Farm and Food Growth Fund partnered with a large CDFI out of the state of Maine to address the Northeast food system. So we really try to bring things down into the county level, but that program was actually a double-digit $1 million program that had access for New York State businesses because we were working in a 7-state collaborative situation. And it starts with the individual contracts on the ground that you all provide, but then it allows us to have those relationships over the 16 years that we've been working together to bring in federal programs from Portland, Maine to cover New York State.
What type of processing is this?
Livestock processing.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you for that report, and good luck with getting your communications back in order.
No worries. I cell phone works well, but it really is nice to have better internet.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Okay. Okay, so our next item agenda is consideration and approval of a resolution for T-Rex Hyde Park owners, authorizing a public hearing on the applicant's requested amendment to the previously approved schedule for payment in lieu of taxes for the project. And Sarah?
So on screen, we have Tom Mulroy of T-Rex and Steve Gerasi, and then coming into the room, hey, you can come in there. We have Jared O'Connor and Larry Boudreau. We also have joining us is their commercial residential development partner, Bozzuto Group, and it's Jeff and Nick, I believe. So,
Okay, Sarah, is there anything more that you want to start out with on this before we open up questions?
yeah, so I'll just do a quick intro and then summary, and then I'll have T-Rex and Bozzuto talk more in detail. But basically, they're coming to the IDA to request an amendment to the pilot agreement for the commercial housing component only. And so.
Can you just define commercial housing for the purpose
Yes.
of this discussion?
So it's the rental housing aspect of the project. If you, you may remember, they came to the IDA in 2023, asking for a 20-year pilot for the entire phase two. And in that time, since then, they have identified a development partner for the housing, and the development partner has looked at the 20-year pilot, but they have discovered that they needed a longer pilot in order to make the project feasible for them. So that's why they're here. This will not impact their sales and mortgage that was previously approved, nor will this impact the other aspect of phase two.
So, and just to be clear, the IDA is allowed to consider commercial residential apartments. We do not normally do single-family housing that is, for sale to individuals. So this is something that could be considered eligible for our pilots.
Sir, I have a presentation I can plug in.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to, well, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you for having us this morning. To give you a quick update on the project, phase one, as you know, is completed. That's the hotel, the sewer plant, the heavy infrastructure, the entrances, that's up and running. And we're launching into phase two. We started extending the entrance roads into phase two and so forth. And phase two is broken into multiple phases. It's considered 12 townhomes, which we have an agreement already closed for a regional developer to joint venture and build those 12 townhomes right next to the hotel behind it. That sits up on the perch, and if you drove by the entrances, you'll see the work that was going on there. And then it's the north part, which will include north of the hotel, the 120,000 square foot building, which we think will be working with in conjunction with most likely the CIA or a tenant like that. And then there's the piece by the Village Green, that's phases 2D, which is what we're talking about here. That's a 344 unit residential project. And then there's the commercial component of approximately 150,000 square feet. So we wanted to come in, and we've been working with the Bozzuto Group, and you have Jeff and Nick on the phone, and I'm going to let Larry and the team run it. But what we've done is, as we go through each parcel and we joint venture and what have you, like we did with Shaner on the hotel and Argo on the residential, now Bozzuto on the multifamily component, this component consists of all our rentals. And it currently, as Sarah mentioned, and Sarah, good introduction to it, it already has a 20-year pilot on it. In working with Bozzuto, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, it's a national firm. They manage and own and operate over 120,000 units around the country. They've gone through their due diligence now for almost 6 months plus. And what they're realizing, because of costs and rates where they are, and we all thought rates would be lower last year to this year than they are. They haven't seemed to budge yet. But because of that, they're looking at different levers they can pull to try to bring in their institutional limited partners, such as the big insurance companies, what have you. Because this piece of it, the 344 units, is going to be up to $180 million to build by itself. That's excluding the rest of phase two. That's just this one 344. We call it parcel 2D, and we have a map we can show you what that is. So, and then there's the other 150,000 square feet of commercial on top of the 120 next to the hotel. That's phases 2C, 2E, and 2B. That's where the city winery and so forth will be. So what we wanted to do is just focus on 2D, which is the 344 rentals only, leave everything else as is, and focus to see how we can get Bozzuto and their team comfortable that this can be somewhat of a commodity, can be clearing the capital markets so they can capitalize it properly and go forward with us and go vertical and build it. We're already doing the site work going up, leading up to their site to bring the utilities and roads to that. And they're, the final phase of theirs is the capitalization now that they have all the numbers and their due diligence completed. And so I'll leave it off at that and let Larry be the point and run it and then introduce Pizzuto and so forth. But again, thank you for everything and Happy New Year to everyone. Ron, it's good to see you at the meetings. It's nice to see you. And Tim, thank you.
Sure, just a quick question. I know at some point there was discussion of a second hotel. Is that still conceptually
Yes, Tim, that's not just a discussion. That's a fact and a reality we have in there. No matter what, we have to build that second hotel, as you know. Because that ties into the IDA as well. Yes, the answer is yes on that, and that's phase 5. And we do have a phasing program that'll take this 2 million feet and show you the 5 phases. Phase 1, as I mentioned, is completed. Phase 2, site plans approved, and we're executing. As I mentioned, we're already doing work on phase 2 with the 12 townhomes, and we're going to 2A, B, C, D, E. And phase 5 is the second hotel. We anticipate that within that 5-year window. Probably we'll look at that. And most likely, our hotel partners don't want to consider digging into it until the first hotel has at least 2 years, if not 3 years, of runway under their belt to prove out the market. The first hotel is an entry-level hotel, and the second one will be the next level above that. And we have term sheets with Marriott as well, although we are talking to other groups, Hilton and what have you. But Marriott has already circled up an autograph for this, which is basically right below Ritz-Carlton, but it's a boutique version of a Ritz-Carlton, and it has all the same amenities, but it can be designed and managed like a local boutique hotel, even though it's part of, just like the Inn at Belfield, even though it's a Residence Inn, it is a boutique version of it. There's only 6 of the 1,500 Residence Inns in the country, in the world. There's only 6 of these types of they call them a soft branded type. So we were able to customize it, and we wanted to make it look like the CIA. The town wanted us to look like it was bookends with the CIA. But the second hotel will be completely available to architecturally design it for the Hudson Valley, and it be run as a boutique hotel. So that, and it'll be up to 300 rooms, 32 villas, and then we have Ritz-Carlton residences, up to 200 of those allocated if we'd like that. Again, we're exploring a lot of different brands, but that's the one we have our deal with too, because the first hotel is a Marriott brand as well. It's nice to have the boutique feel for the Hudson Valley, but yet have a major national engine behind us. So that's worked out well for us at the Inn at Belfield. And for those of you who have not been there, I know Sarah's been there. We'd love to invite you there, either informally or formally. Please let us know, and we can roll out the red carpet for you for a tour. But yes, the answer, Tim, to your question is the second hotel is 100% on the drawing board. It's just going to be phase 5, which has always been planned to be phase 5 after the first hotel gets legs under it.
So, and then just, again, you don't have to give a big explanation, just generally, just to keep everybody sort of mentally on track. Phase 3 and phase 4, what are phase 3 and phase 4?
Phase 3 is approximately 148 townhomes. That will be what's called the terrace. And that, and I don't know if Jared, do you have in your presentation for the team, do you have?
I don't want you to go into that much detail, just to.
Sure.
And then phase.
Yep. So the project in total is, I don't know if you remember, Tim, but it's 2.1 million feet. The first 100,000 was the first hotel. So the 2 million feet remaining, roughly, we have 1.3 million of it is residential, 60%. Of which that consists of approximately 801 residential units, and the rest is hospitality and commercial. Of the 801 residential units, 344 of them are rentals, which we're speaking of today. Right. And then there's 148 townhomes. There's 129 condos. Then there's...
is that phase 4?
Phase 4 is going to be, you got the 344 in phase 2, the 148 townhomes in phase 3. And phase 4 will be the remainder, which will be a mix of townhomes and what have you. Is about the remainder of those, including the 129 condos.
Okay, all
So
right.
it's all residential. That would not be,
Yes.
phase 3 and 4 do not have any IDA benefits on it because they're all for sale residential. So
Correct.
the only IDA benefits beyond phase 2 will be phase 5, which is the northwest corner, right across the street from the Desai Blue Sake Company. And also phase 4A, which is the second hotel. Outside of that, phase 2 is the only thing that has the IDA in the future phases here.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Lots going on here, and we will be talking about phase 5 coming in soon because we do have an LOI for a pretty cool concept there with a TV and film production center that we think will be a huge benefit for the area. And they're in the middle of their capital raise mode and have more probably in about 6 months. But that's the other part of the commercial.
Great.
Okay, thank you. All right, Larry, you want to?
Okay, terrific. Terrific. Thank you, Tom. And good morning, everyone, and thank you for welcoming us here this morning. Just to touch on the project as a whole, 340 acres. We designed it into 5 neighborhoods. So those are the neighborhoods Tom was mentioning. This application has always been the village neighborhood or the core mixed-use center. And so that's what this application is on. Of course, we're coming back and I am going to present the site plan part of the presentation and then showing what we're doing from a site planning standpoint. We have had conversations with the town, and we have submitted this site plan to the town for their review, and we're going to be meeting with them again at their meeting a week from Wednesday on the 15th of January. What we do is, so I'm going to run through that part of the presentation, then the next part, the Visigo team, Nick and Jeff will talk about why we need this, why we're here, why we submitted this application. Jared will take the next part, which will be the numbers in the application on a high level. As you know, this was sent to Camoin, and we just got comments back yesterday. We'll be so
Camoin being our third-party
correct.
They're doing.
benefit
Exactly.
analysis.
Yep, so they're going to, we've engaged them to look at their request and see if the request is reasonable.
Right. So do we have a mouse to run these?
So you can just say next.
Okay, very good. And then there's both Steve Drossi and Tom will jump in as of course needed. So the first page in the PowerPoint presentation is the IDA site plan that we presented in 2022. So that should look familiar with everybody. This is a mixed use concept, and in that site plan at that time we identified a total of 344 residential units mixed throughout the development, along with the commercial side of it, and all the square footage is tied to that. The next slide shows just kind of, this is the FDP. So when we get site plan approvals with the town, it's called the final development plan, short, long for FDP. So this plan on this slide, page 2, make sure we're there, yep, is approved by the town. We also wanted to show you, as Tom mentioned, the current work that we're doing. The blue, of course, is our phase 1. That is in. The green is currently under construction. Both Jared and I are at the office trailer every day. Anytime anybody wanted to come out, you can come visit us. We'll take you around. The next slide shows the IDA site plan and identifies the residential mix. And so what we did, as you may remember, we had 3/1. What that means is 3 stories of residential over 1-story podium or parking. So the garage was on the bottom, 3 stories above, and that's in that blue color. In that orange color, the 120 lofts would be 2 stories of lofts over retail. So that's what was identified, and that totals 344. So this identifies,
On the next slide.
yeah, yes, we go to the next slide. Yep. Great. This slide identifies how we're moving the resi and consolidating it to a more centralized location. Whole bunch of reasons for that, and Jeff and Nick can get into that, but this identifies, the green identifies where we're consolidating all the residential to. So in other words, the residential of the orange buildings are moving in the location of the green buildings, and same thing with the lofts, we're moving everything into a centralized location. And if you flip the page, on page 5, slide 5, you'll see the centralized location. This plan we had sent, we just recently sent because we have continued to work on it, has been sent to the town, and we will be discussing this with them next Wednesday. But what this shows is a podium parking deck and 4 stories of resi above. All 344 units would be located here, much more efficient. You can see how we eliminated all the buildings to the left, and by doing that, from a site planning standpoint, engineering, civil, much easier to work with. This will be likely phased, and we did identify that, 250 for the phase 1, which would be the left of that red line, and then 94, which would be to the right. Again, this is 4 stories sitting over a parking deck. We do recognize the value of coordinating, and obviously from a site planning standpoint, lining it up and keying it into the village green. The idea is these apartments in the village green is our next phase. All that would go together. The next slide, slide 6, zooms in on it, and you can kind of see what we're doing there, but it's basically centered around 3 courtyards. The units will be wrapped around those courtyards, except on the west side, which is the bottom of the page side, where all the views would come out over into the Hudson Valley. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to both Jeff and Nick, and thank you guys for joining us this morning.
Are there mics turned on?
They should, Mike and Nick, if you shouldn't have asked to be unmuted.
There we go. I know I just got unmuted.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, guys.
I guess when it originally allowed us to unmute, if you mute back, you can't come back. So that was my bad. But thank you for letting Nick and I join you. So I'm Jeff Case, a managing director with Bozzuto Development Company. Nick is a vice president with Bozzuto Development Company. Both been here close to a couple decades, and we are really thrilled to be partners with Tom and the T-Rex team here, particularly based on everything that they've accomplished. So effectively, while Bozzuto and T-Rex on this multifamily redevelopment phase will be the lead sponsors of the community, we of course will require very significant institutional investment from both equity partners and debt partners. And amidst extremely challenging market conditions that we're in at the moment, and particularly within a location where there's not a whole lot of precedent for Class A, trophy quality multifamily communities, we have determined that we would not be able to advance the multifamily project with the existing 20-year pilot, as good as it is. So the proposed adjustment to the 30-year pilot is really critically important to advancing this project, both the pre-development associated with it, to get to this closing, and then of course to close and finance the project going forward. Even with this 30-year adjustment, I should note that the T-Rex team, and particularly Bozzuto, has a lot of work to do ahead of us in order to achieve financeable economics. So as we've gone out to prospective institutional equity partners, those that we typically use and that all of our, or many of our colleagues and competitors would use, these partners are very focused on the tax cliff event, as we call it, right? This event in year 20, when the pilot goes away and you're left with a very substantial tax bill, particularly on a per unit basis for the larger project. Many of our deals, and we're based in the Mid-Atlantic, we operate nationally, we manage about 130,000 units nationally, are seeing taxes, unabated taxes that are significantly lower than those that we're subject to in this location. So as we are here to request this revision from 20 to 30 years, as Jared or others on the T-Rex team will outline after this slide, I should note that despite the net present value of that change being relatively small, the improvement to the marketability of this project to both equity and debt partners is dramatic because we push that tax cliff event from year 20 to year 30. So, of course, it goes without saying that drafting off of everything that's been done out here by everyone on this call, this multifamily community is really predicated on the placemaking and the unique design and the location that will be associated with this redevelopment. But as in most of our competitors, equity investors are unfamiliar with this location as an institutional grade multifamily location, we really need to do everything we can to improve their level of confidence in this investment, particularly amidst these challenging conditions, and ensuring that they can get past this concern that future buyers of this community are going to punitively discount the valuation at the time of a purchase is really critical. And that I think is the primary reason that we're here today requesting this update from 20 to 30 years. So thank you very much for the consideration, for the continued partnership, and here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, so next slide, and then Jared will go through this, and then we can open up the questions.
Yes, thanks, Larry. And so as Larry mentioned, we've been contacted by Camoin, and so we'll follow up with an update analysis as they deem necessary for their methodology. But what we've presented here on this page is trying to make the most apples to apples comparison of the pilot schedule you've seen before to what is now being proposed. So on the right side of the page, there's two tables. The table in blue shows the approved pilot that was last presented to the board through all the years. So you start with a year of construction, we have a year of lease up, and then after that, we're stabilized. And then on the right side, we're showing the 30-year proposed pilot, and I've highlighted in yellow the years where there's adjustments. So in year 5, which would be year 4 of the pilot, there is an adjustment from 90 to 95%. And what this is to reflect that we're actually projecting more likely to have 2 years of total construction from start to finish. And then the lease up period will likely be longer as well. So instead of just 1 year, it might be 2. And so therefore we're pushing the 95 out to pick up one of the years where we'll be at full stabilization. And then in years 17 through 21 is an extension from 65% 60%, and 50% to 75% at the end of at the end of that period. So that impacts the first 20 years. And then the last piece of the table goes from years 22 to years 31, and that's the extra 10 years that we're here to talk about. But most importantly, to highlight what is the impact of that, on the left side of the page, you'll see the net present value assessment of these cash flows. So at the top of the 20-year, you see a roughly $29 million impact, and then the 30-year is a $33 million. So the net difference between these two is about $4.6 million of additional benefit on a net present value basis. So to Jeff's point earlier, from a discounted perspective, the 30 years isn't adding a ton of return to the projects, but it's more about being able to market the sellability of the project at the tail end of it for the initial long-term investors. And so with that, I'll pause it and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I've got a couple, but I'll open it up to the board as well.
So the initial question, I'm just on the apartments. So that entire block, the two-part, is all on top of a parking garage. So the entire lot is covered by parking garage. Okay.
Now, what we originally approved, all the apartments, the 224, were over a podium.
You've just gone up another story.
Yeah, we did go up another story to pull the lofts in.
What happens, what's the plan for the land that you're now not building on?
Well, it'll still, that land, well, we get out of the rock, so we avoid site costs.
So, I mean, is that still something that you foresee using in the future?
We will likely use the north end of it, where there's less rock, but for purposes of our phase two, with the town and the IDA site plan, we're out of it for now.
Mark, did you have some?
I just wanted to follow up with the format. So these apartments are market rate.
Market rate.
And so you'd mentioned trophy quality. And is there any age restriction?
No.
Or anything like that?
No.
So, and you've have some kind of quantification of the impact on the school district?
Yes,
And services in general, actually. because-
Yes, and we'll go through that again. We'll meet with Dr. Roman. Tom has already spoken.
Do you have an idea of how many students that you expect when this?
Yeah, we'll come up with a number, for that, and of course, Dr. Roman will want to know that.
But you don't have that now?
No, but we'll get it.
These numbers are already approved, right?
No, I'm talking about, actually, excuse me, you're right, yes, we do.
Prior analysis, I
Yeah,
believe,
yeah,
has an
I'm
estimate.
sorry.
And I don't know what that is off the top
Yeah,
of my head.
I don't have it.
Net is still the same,
That's right.
344.
Yeah.
Well, the number.
The unit count is not changing.
Right.
However,
That's a good
just as kind of background
Yeah,
question.
no,
Because
I.
we're offering more text, yeah.
Yes, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, no, good point.
So really the,
Bedroom counts?
No, well.
Well, the mix has changed
yeah.
slightly.
Lovely.
We are leaning more towards a few more 2-bedrooms, and I think the prior analysis had a few more 1-bedrooms. But just given the market feedback that Bozzuto has seen, that they think a little bit more on the 2-bedroom side would be appreciated by the folks in the area.
but that could increase student count slightly.
So we'll take a look.
Yeah,
at
we'll
that.
take a look at the bedroom count.
Right, 'cause that, I'm sure the school, those are numbers of interest to the school. So really, and how much of this, what's the percentages of this difference here that go to the school versus the town?
So about, I, not off the top of my head, but it's like 68 to 72% of property tax in Hyde Park goes to the school district.
Okay, so that's the change in the revenue that they would see,
Yeah.
would be, probably a little bit over 3 million less
Less.
revenue to the school.
Over 30 years.
No, Sarah,
Yes,
what's on the project evaluation form?
yes.
That's basically what we already approved, the
So-
90, the benefits here that are listed. So
Yes.
we're really just looking at the 4.6.
Yes.
And then had the town and the school district are on board with this?
So they are currently in conversation with the town and the school district. They will not come back for their final until we know that they've had conversations and that and the board is aware of what those conversations were. So it's part of the, I don't consider this a rush request in any way, but Bozzuto is meeting with some of their investment partners at the end of this month, and they wanted some indication of, the appetite of the board for this amendment. So again, what is being considered is basically the project as a whole has been approved. So it's we'll be holding another public hearing to hear what it is. And then at a future date, the final, once we have, again, the reasonability study and an indication from both the town and the school district on their thoughts of this.
But we don't need the school district's approval.
No, we don't need the town's approval. We just need their kind of like their thoughts.
We asked for their
Yeah,
thoughts. And
I believe Tom is trying to get off mute. He might have muted himself by accident if someone
okay.
muted.
Just a question on the redesign. So you originally had 120 units over the retail buildings.
Yeah.
Is that retail component completely gone and you will not gonna
No, the retail stays, it's high ceilings, 18 feet, it'll still appear to be close to a two-story building, but
there's no units over top of it?
no units on top of it.
Okay. So it doesn't look like you're decreasing the footprint of development that much.
No, the commercial's staying the same for the most part.
no, it's you're not building those separate residential buildings. You
Right.
added that to the top of the ones there.
And to answer your question, I'm sorry, I couldn't get back in on the mute. And you can put Jeff, it looks like he's he's muted now, so I don't know if you knocked him out, but I did speak with Dr. Peter Roman a couple days ago, and he was going to talk internally, and we were going to get him a one-page summary so he can have a talking point internally. But we've had a very good relationship with them, and we feel that we don't feel there'll be any issues with them. And I did mention it to the town supervisor in Hyde Park as well. And again, he expressed the same thing. They seem very supportive of the project. This is a key component of the project in total, but in particular phase 2, because the retail needs the bodies there to be shopping in the center. So this is sort of the key that opens up the rest of phase 2, and that phase 2 is the key that opens up the rest of the project. So it is sort of critical for us to move on with this.
What's the cost issue? This may sound like a dumb question, but what's the cost issue that encouraged you to move the lofts above the commercial space over there?
I'm going to let Jeff speak to that, but I can speak to your first comment as far as the dumb question. The only dumb question is a question never asked.
We found that our best communities, especially the ones where we want synergy among the residents, are when we consolidate them. So the folks over the lofts would not be connected to their parking. They'd be pretty distant from our leasing office and our amenity space. So we think the experience is better keeping them all, sort of in one place, so that they all have the same benefit. And if they don't, then sometimes those units would actually gather less rent because they don't have the the benefit of being close to their parking, close to their, the activities, the courtyards, the pool, the views, all of that stuff. So we find it just a better experience for our residents.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
About the graduation of the pilot proposed, and wondering where that graduation comes from. Who's put that forward? Is that in concert with the assessor, or how did that come about? Since it's
We put the proposed schedule together, and it was really just trying to extend the tailing effect on the back end of the 20-year, and then we're just trying to smooth it out towards the 30-year. So that's the approach we took for this.
I just would recommend.
There's also a little bit more. there's also a little bit more lease up risk. So it helps smooth out the front end when we're leasing up, when we're not collecting as much revenue.
My personal feeling is that you're not tailing it off on an even graduated basis. You're holding a high percentage of reduced assessment right up until year 25, essentially.
What years are you looking at, just so I can?
Oh, just that.
Yeah, he sees a 65.
65 dropped to
goes
35.
Correct.
65 to 35, I see, okay.
Yep.
That's where it really drops.
And maybe I'll make a brief comment as it relates to the return on cost analysis that we and our investors do. While the additional pilot that's being requested is of relatively smaller consequence from a net present value standpoint, when we go out to the market, the institutional equity does look at our return on cost in assessing the investment parameters. So that is our net operating income over the total cost of the project. And the way that most of the investors look at the pilot is they take the net present value of the pilot over the 20 or the 30 years, and they reduce the total cost of the project, right, the denominator, by that net present value. So it is important that while we also extend the pilot to 30 years, we do so in a way that maximizes the net present value so that that return on cost is as marketable as it can possibly be to this equity group. Hopefully that made sense. I understand if it didn't.
It's not.
Just trying to reduce costs.
Yeah, I mean,
It's as simple as.
yes. Finding the right balance of maximizing the revenue to the taxing entities and making it sellable to the market. Your real question is that
Yes,
the
sir.
best that can be done? Ron, did you what?
I did have, thank you, Chairman. Forgive me because I'm not familiar with this project. I didn't see the original application and the resolutions. But what percentage are you anticipating is going to be student housing?
There's no student housing.
No student housing. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard you.
That one was like.
It's market rate.
It's all market rates.
Yeah.
Come over, they pay the
Market. No, okay. I didn't know if there was agreement with the culinary. Okay. And in the model, what are you anticipating for rent for loft, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom? What's your market, your target?
It's about 2,600 a unit.
So break it down, loft, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom.
Give me 1 second, Jared, and I can answer that question. Just working off a tiny laptop here.
Well,
So
that
we
is one of the questions that the Camoin Group asked us to do, so we'll provide that.
Sure. So we have a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, dens, and 3 bedrooms. Our studio units, which I think you're referring to as lofts, is about $2,100. They're on the smaller end. Our average 2 bedroom is about $3,000. If you get a second bathroom, there's a little bit of a bump there. And our most expensive unit, which is a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, we only have a few of those, is about $4,200. But the majority of them, the 1 bedrooms, are $2,600 a month. And the 2 bedrooms, which is another 40, about 50% of the units, is they average between $3,000 and $3,400 a month.
Thank you, Jim.
And that's a push.
Oh, Nick, we lost you at the last sentence.
I said, and that is a premium over any of the comps that we can find. So we're definitely pushing the rents from some of the market. We had to spread our radius out to find something nearby comps. So that is a point in question because we will be challenged on those rents that we think we can achieve.
I think also the benefit of this project in whole, in this rental piece of it, is adding more supply to a very demand constrained market, which is naturally pushing rents across all the projects up because there just is not enough supply. I've heard waiting lists from the faculty at Marist and faculty at New Vance Hospital for upwards of a year of a waiting list. So just adding pure supply at any level is going to hopefully alleviate some of the, demand issues going on right now in the regional market.
Did we get the letter from Camoin? Do we get to see their comments?
Oh, yeah, yes.
And I was gonna ask, when is that gonna be ready?
So that will be ready, they think, it all depends, they just contacted them yesterday.
Yep.
So just, part of it is how quickly they can get the information and process it. We are targeting towards the end of this month, to see if, we can get, T-Rex back for the February meeting. If we don't get the report in time for that, then that pushes out. That T-Rex will come back.
It makes it difficult to make a decision on this without those comments.
Yeah,
I guess
well,
is my-
so just to be clear, is that there is no decision being made by the board right now. It's just to approve, to allow public hearing to be held.
Understood, but it feels like it feels like voting in favor of it without the information is a commitment that we're in support of it, right? Because that's what they're trying to bring to their investors, and I feel like that may not be a true representation of my vote, at least.
Understood. And also, before the public hearing, would the Camoin report be available?
So we could, we can schedule it that way.
I mean, I think,
So-
because that would be a publicly available piece of
Right,
information.
it should be
Yes.
contingent upon.
Yes.
Yes, so I agree. This one's a little bit rushed in that we don't have some of the stuff that we would normally see before we agreed just to put it to
Public hearing.
So I think, to my mind, and maybe this would help make all of us feel a little more comfortable knowing that the public would have a chance to see that Camoin report to inform their questions or comments that they make at a public hearing, as well as our own prior to, coming back for our final approval.
Yeah.
Because this isn't preliminary approval. This is
This is not
adjusting
preliminary.
the benefits
Yes, so because preliminary approval was already given,
Right.
Back then. So
for the
this-
20-year pilot.
Yeah, so this is just, what is being considered, what the board is approving is allowing a public hearing to be held on the amendment. You're not approving,
Just like at Eastdale when they changed. the-
exactly.
Right.
Well,
Right, but we're not approving the 30-year or any
No, you're just-
deviation.
No, no approval of any amendment is happening.
Or benefits.
Or benefits is happening right now.
The
It's
only
just-
thing we're approving is a public hearing.
Okay.
And I understand that, but my
Yeah, no,
comment still is that I feel like when you vote to move it to a public hearing, you're moving the project along.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily know that my vote will I don't want my vote to be reflecting that, not based on all the information we have.
Correct. So that's valid.
Yep.
And I think that you all hear that, for us, a little bit, we definitely will want to see that Camoin report.
We know how much the board relies on that. We've been through this before.
Sure.
Camoin has issued draft reports, previously. So maybe they can issue a draft report to the board, faster. So.
Well, I think, and again, this is not binding, but I think that it would be very important that something be available to the public prior to that public hearing, a reasonable time.
We could just make sure that we don't schedule the public hearing until after the report.
Yeah, that's.
That's
true.
That's fair.
This just gives authority.
Sure.
Right.
That would make, I would be more comfortable knowing that everybody had a chance to see that.
Yeah, and we want to thank Sarah for initiating the whole process by sending it to Camoin. We were surprised getting their comments to us yesterday, because we thought at this meeting you'd authorize them to begin their review.
Yeah, and I knew that the board would want to see the
Yeah.
feasibility report sooner than later, so that's why I kind of rushed it a little bit.
So we'll jump right on it. Sharon and I, whole Bozzuto team, Tom, Steve, we'll get right on it.
Okay, so, is there any other questions?
Just one other question, Chairman. We talk about this cliff at year 20 or 21 as the rent up and the lease up. Is that normal in this industry, or is this because of the rate environment, the interest rates? I mean, is it the cost, the interest rate? What is pushing to extend this 10 years, basically, in a quick summary?
Sure, I'll take that important question. And I'd say it's all of the above. So to begin, just with regard to the project, irrespective of the pilot, the costs, which have gone up dramatically over the past several years, interest rates, which we all know have gone up, and despite the Fed dropping short-term rates, long-term rates have continued to go up, which has been frustrating. And even rents have flattened a bit during that time. Expenses have gone up, so it's kind of a perfect storm that we're working through. But specific to the cliff, I would say any project with a significant pilot is subject to that issue. It's something that we deal with on many communities that deal with tax credits. Baltimore City, for instance, is a perfect example where you can't develop a multifamily community without a substantial tax credit. The challenge that we've been working through here is, and something you know far better than I, is that the unabated taxes here are extraordinarily high. So as a result, the return drops dramatically in that year, and that has been what our partners, all banks and life insurance companies and others that you're familiar with, many of whom are based in New York City, have really struggled to get behind in lending their support to the project.
I can just add to that a little to put some numbers to this. The average property taxes per unit per year around the country are somewhere between, and Jeff and Nick, you can agree and let me know what is somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000. In this location on a present basis, apples to apples, I think they go almost to $9,000. So the cliff is a little more exacerbated in this area versus any other place.
That's per unit.
That's per unit per year. So in normal, an average place would go between $3,000 and $6,000 per unit per year for property taxes for rentals like this, market rate rentals. This one goes up to almost $9,000. So the difference is almost 200% to 300% higher than the average that these institutional groups look at. And that's what exacerbates that cliff even further. It just highlights how much the taxes are more than anywhere else around for these average units.
And it doesn't eliminate the cliff event. It just pushes it out to year 30 so that our initial investor isn't staring at that cliff. Like the last 10 years is when the value really starts to diminish. So this just pushes it out so that this initial investor says, okay, it's the cliff event is 30 years from now. We're looking at a 10-year hold. When I sell in year 10, there's still a huge benefit from the pilot that will keep the value of the property high enough to make the returns.
And this is independent of any reevaluation of the property for increase in appraised value.
But I think there's also an assumption that the town and school taxes, the rates stay the same, regardless of how much development there is in the town of Hyde Park. So sort of, let's say the number of units in Hyde Park double, therefore, yes, there's an increase in service requirements and so on, but does that necessarily mean there's a double in the need for taxing the residents? So I think there's sort of an assumption there that's built in. I take it that it's built in just from what you're saying, that essentially rates stay the same as opposed to the judging where the overall need for taxation is going to go in the future.
Well, and that's a good point. If you're looking at a big picture of the schools and services and what have you, the biggest thing that we had a great relationship with the school board and Dr. Peter Roman there. What they realized is they weren't really focused on this particular building or phase 2, because they realized if in isolation they look at that and they're looking at the numbers. But what it does is it activates phases 3, 4, and 5. And it goes from, total benefit to the school of $35 million over these years to over $250 million, $240 million once phase 3, 4, and 5 activate. Because remember, 3 and 4 are residential, not subject to any kind of tax abatements or what have you. So they were looking at big picture. We can't get those done without this section done. So they looked at it in total and realized it's not just a $35, $40 million of taxes versus 70, 80 million we should be getting. It's really, this activates that next phase 3 and 4, which we're actively pushing as fast as we can to get to, which we can't get to until this phase is done. So when we went through those numbers with not only town supervisor, more importantly, or less, equally importantly, but more interestingly, is the town realized that as a project, how much significant taxes that's going to come in to the project when phase 3 and 4 happen. And that's not just a couple million, that's well over $240 million that come in phases 3, 4, and 5. Again, 3 and 4 just being pure residential, not subject to any tax abatements and what have you. That's where
That
they
also-
really were black and white, and it was just staring them in the face like, we got to get this done because we can certainly use that 200 and some odd million dollars over that period of time, sooner rather than later.
Well, one thing to mention again about Hyde Park, somewhat uniquely is the number of tax exempt parcels in that town really limits their ability to collect tax revenue, on a significant part of their land. So
Yep.
it makes these projects even more critically important to them.
Yeah, I mean, just on the hotel alone, which is only 5% of the entire project, we're, I think, writing a check close to $300,000 to Hyde Park this year in the first year of operation, where it's basically a best break even in the first year. They're getting a check for almost $300,000, which is a good number for them. And that only represents 5% of this project. So if you look at the project in total, when they fit, and these are not different silos that are part of just a rolling the dice and it's just a mishmash of project. It's a well thought out, choreographed master plan that we had brought in some very well known people, Hart Howington and a few others, that master plan that integrated it. So it all should be looked at as one project. And the biggest benefit to the town, the county, and the state is when this is built in total, not just the one or two pieces by themselves. And they all have to be built within, as a project, not just pieces here and not do this and just do that. So again, it's significant taxes, well over $40 million over this time frame that come into the town once this is done.
Okay, any other questions? Would anybody be willing to make a motion to approve this resolution authorizing a public hearing on the applicant's request?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Would somebody be willing to second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, Jasmine, will you please take a roll call vote?
Mark Doyle,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer. Approved. Amy Bondieri.
Approved.
James McCone.
Approve.
Deidre Houston. Approved. Tim Dean.
Approved. Okay, we look forward to further comments and further information and the public hearing, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is authorization for approval for check signing as of January 8th, and that would be myself, Mark Doyle, Kathleen Bauer, Sarah Lee, and Jane Denbaum as check signers. And Jane or Sarah, would you remind everybody what our dual signature requirement is, at what threshold?
10,000.
So anything over 10,000 requires two signatures. And I always like to mention also that if one of us has a conflict with anything that's within the payable that the check is for, we request that another signer be added as opposed to ours. For example, there are times when there are payments made for insurance purposes, and I don't always, I make sure that somebody else besides me signs those because sometimes they involve the company that I'm the chairman of the board. Okay, anything else for this meeting? Okay, I'd like to adjourn the IDA meeting.
Oh, with the,
Did I miss something?
we didn't do a motion.
The motion.
We didn't. do a
Oh,
motion.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Thank you, Jasmine. Go ahead. So we're going to take the vote on the motion and the second in front of us.
Which is the check signing?
Check sign.
Yes. So I need to get a motion, actually.
I'll make a
My
motion.
apologies.
For the check signing.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Deirdre. Okay, let's take a vote on that.
Okay. Mark Doyle.
Approved.
Kathy Bauer. Approved. Amy Bondieri.
Approved.
James McCone.
Approved.
Deidre Houston. Tim Dean.
Approved. And again, Deirdre's new on the board. I just wanted to mention to her, I do everything by roll call vote. I don't do consent or anything like that. I just feel that our work is very important. And I think, for our minutes, I want everybody to know the individual votes of members. Okay, now we can adjourn this meeting.